broaden the scope and to deepen the scope and to speak about things that are oftentimes not set in the traditional economic perspective. And in order to do so, probably we will need the feminist perspective, and that's why we would like to speak about dependency. We want to speak about feminist or feminine sectors that are invisible oftentimes, and we would also like to speak about strategies, alternatives, about different ways to overcome this situation through cooperation. And in order to do so, today we have the presence of very powerful speakers. My name is Amanda from the Feminist Cooperativa, and I have the pleasure to facilitate this panel discussion. Today we count with the presence of Sara Moreno Colom. She holds a PhD in Sociology in UAV. She is also a researcher about everyday life and work. We also count on Vania Arana. She is the spokesperson of LasKellys Catalonia. She is a third sector worker for more than 20 years and an activist for the rights of women. We have the pleasure also to count on the participation of Montserrat Sedó. She is a nurse and a social worker in a feminist hospital. She's a trade unionist and a feminist. She is the Secretary for Women and LGBTIQ Policies of Comisiones Obreras Trade Union and a member of the Network of Women for Health, as well as other organizations. And we also have Özgür Öztürk. She's one of the founding members of Cooperativa Cooperative. She holds a PhD in Sociology. She's a member of the Macropolis, and she's a feminist. So having said that, I would like to give the floor to Sara Moreno Colom. I would like to say also that we'll have first a turn of presentations, and then we will leave some room for Q&A. So you can please write down in the chat box any comment or any question that you would like to share at the end of the session. And having said that, thank you very much, and off we go. Hello, and thank you very much, Amanda. First of all, thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you present here virtually in this 7th forum. Thank you very much for having invited me. It is a pleasure, and it's always an honor to have the possibility to share reflections here jointly. So, as Amanda was saying before, in the framework of this panel discussion, the aim of this presentation has to do with framing the concept of feminist economies and trying to give you a hint, a theoretical hint, but also an empirical hint about today's reality to see where we stand, where we should head towards. And for this, my presentation is organized in 3 different points. The first one has to do with framing the concept from a theoretical perspective. Secondly, I would like to look back in history and see what happened with the 2008 crisis, which was an economic crisis, and what role did feminist economies play. And thirdly, I will conclude by speaking about the COVID-19 crisis, the pandemic, and the economic outcome of the pandemic. So let's start with the first point to frame the topic. It's interesting to remember that the word economy has an etymological meaning that stems from Greek or econos, the administration of the house. So this means that the word economy etymologically refers to the situation, to the domestic situation, to the private world, right? Aiming at better managing private goods and doings within homes, within families. And the word evolved, and the word then started meaning wealth management. So what we reflect about from feminist perspective is going back to the original meaning. If at the beginning the economy was about dealing with what happens within homes, and then little by little it ended up becoming wealth management. Well, in the context of feminist economies, we need to go back to the original meaning of the work economy. We need to go back to an economy that places human well-being at the center. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is today crisis or other crisis an opportunity to start going back to the original meaning of economy, placing life at the center? Indeed, I believe it is an opportunity, and a lot has been said in this sense regarding whether there is an opportunity to see today's crisis as an opportunity, right? And it's nothing new. Any crisis puts on the table the question about whether there is an opportunity for transformation, for social transformation in this sense. So before tackling this point, I believe it is important to remember that in this area, in this idea of placing human beings and human well-being at the center of the economy, I believe that it's important to recall what we think about when we think about gender economy or an economy with a gender perspective. In today's world, economy is based on the neoclassical definition of economy. So when we include the gender perspective, what does the whole panorama look like? So the first thing has to do with understanding that the economy is not neutral free as any other as any other thing, right? And when we include the gender perspective, we just remember that inequalities between men and women are not the result of a biological natural phenomenon, but rather the result of a sociological process that somehow builds or digs into this inequality. So if the focus, if this gender economy is reframed, then we come to the conclusion that the more classical or productive economy has taken production at the center. And from a gender perspective, I think is about understanding the productive area, but also the reproductive reality and the everyday life of human beings. So it's about widening the scope. So this would be the first element. And the second element has to do with understanding that the object of the economy can not only be that generates wealth, work, paid work. The object of the economy needs to be widened. We need to understand that work is not only having a job and other works, other keywords for human reproduction need to be taken into account. And in the senses where we pay attention to the importance of homework and care, the care economy, because these are key elements to ensure reproduction independently on whether this is related to a salary or not, or to the production of wealth understood from a neoclassical economical perspective. Then there's the subject. Now we have defined the scenario, we know the object. Now what about the subject? The economy, from a traditional perspective, takes those who are active from a labor perspective as a subject, when in fact, from the gender perspective, all human beings can be subject of the economy in the sense that what matters from our perspective is the reproduction of human life in general. So the subject is not only those who are active from a professional point of view, but rather any person that carries out any form of work, which is key for human reproduction. Because the objective, what is the objective of the economy? From a gender perspective, oftentimes we criticize that the objective cannot be only the generation of wealth. We need to understand the economy in terms of everyday life well-being, about also externalities in terms of human well-being and the interdependency that the economy builds. So we need to make an important jump between a more materialist perspective into a scenario that takes into account the importance of the everyday life reality, independently of the relationship in terms of remuneration or the labor market. We need to take into account also the all human beings part of the economy, and we need to focus on the economic horizon beyond economic well-being. So from this perspective, gender and occupation are not enough to understand the feminist perspective, and we need to carry out an important jump forward and take a more holistic approach. And here time allows us to put light on many areas that go oftentimes unnoticed. From this perspective, we need to understand the following. The element that I always like to recall, which is that if today we have unemployed women, that's because women work too much in other areas, which is not the labor market. The responsibility at home and responsibility when it comes to taking care of others in the private world, let's say, produces a burden, an important time burden on many women. So that means a lack of availability to carry out other activities, such as, for example, being active in the labor market, but also political participation, activism, etc. So from a gender perspective, when we speak about the economist, the feminist economy, we come to a conclusion that it's impossible to understand the public domain without understanding the role of individuals in the private world, because both areas are intermingled. What happens here has an impact on what happens there, right? If I am 100% available in the labor market, I will not be able to pay attention to my everyday life needs. I will have no time to invest in the care economy, and vice versa. If I'm only available at home, if I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of others, I'm less available to be part of the public sphere, no matter what that is. So that's how we better understand the picture of the feminist economy, or what the feminist economy is about. So from this prism, now moving to the second point that I raised before in the definition of my presentation, we can come to the conclusion that all crises have a similar pattern. Of course, each crisis is specific in nature, and each economic recession has had its own causes and consequences. Well, feminist economists think about patterns that are very important to take into account when we think about whether a crisis can be an opportunity to improve this path towards the original meaning of economy, placing at the center the importance of life. So, in general, one could say that when the crisis knocks into your door, the quality jumps out of the window, right? This would be the general norm. And this, of course, has to do with the work of the feminists. And independently of the causes of a crisis, there are four patterns that reproduce all the time. Women have to take more and more responsibilities after every crisis, especially if there is a lack of economic acknowledgement for the reproduction of human life. Then there's a second pattern that is quite systematic in all crisis scenarios. It has to do with the fact that male employment recovers much more quickly than female or women employment, right? And this is a pattern that reproduces in almost all crises. And then there's another pattern as a result of the crisis. There is sometimes institutional step backwards in terms of gender equality. So these patterns are clearly the ones that defined the recovery from the economic crisis in the year 207 to 208. The crisis had a very economic pattern in terms of job destruction of the labor market over then. As you remember, a lot of male employment was affected because there was a clear impact on the real estate market. So there was an important job destruction in terms of male or masculine areas, whereas the more feminine sectors such as services, etc., better resisted the job destruction, and women better resisted because the nature of the crisis had a very sectorial component. So out of this first stage of the crisis that started in 2008, well, there was a second wave of the crisis in 2010, 2011, which was a reconstruction of the crisis or the start of the reconstruction. And this pattern to reconstruct the crisis was in key of productive masculine economy. So there was a clear recovery of the masculine employment. Women ended up gathering more responsibilities and burden in the private sector, and there was a clear step back in gender equality that was legitimized by the whole austerity paradigm, which was, of course, a paradigm that embraced all the social policies, but it had a very important impact on equality. And allow me to, well, of course, gender equality was not a priority, and this had a terrible impact in terms of gender violence, for example, because all these policies had a direct impact on the public services in this domain, not only in this area, but also in areas such as job production, job creation, etc. All this was affected by this pattern that is always the same. So having said that, I would dare saying that, well, we came up with some opportunities because this initial situation somehow eliminated the gender gap in the labor market. Many people would say, oh, no, the gender gap, the salary gap is being improved. No, no, the problem was that oftentimes it was a problem of men earning less and less, not women earning more and more. So it's interesting to understand that gender equality was preserved after the crisis with horizontal segregation as well as vertical segregation. And what some described as an opportunity ended up being a trap for women. So here, now I would like to make the link with today's reality. And here's the third point I would like to share with you. What happens today? So from this perspective of the feminine economy, or the feminist economies, I would like to say that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has underlined the crisis in the care economy. But not saying anything new, right? The crisis in the care economy is a long-lasting crisis that has been deeply assessed and it has been deeply analyzed for many years. But it's also true that the pandemic, that the crisis that originated as a result of COVID-19 outbreak and that had a more, say, health-related nature that has turned into a social and economic crisis. And this crisis has been useful to underline and understand the scope and the intensity of the care economy. When I say the care economy crisis, well, there are different words that can be used. What are we speaking about? Well, we have a problem. We have a problem in the sense that we have more and more demand for care services, and there is less and less offer. To cut a long story short, in a context like ours, here in Spain, the family is very important, and family means women. In the next years, there will be not enough women in families to take care with so many elderly people living in families. So the care economy crisis is a crisis that stems as a result of the demographic changes, the aging of the population. Of course, it's nice to increase our life expectancy, but at the same time, this means care services demand. Women are less and less available because they are more present in the labor market. And in parallel, there's another important element, another important phenomenon, and that is that men are not at home, men are not working at home. So the system is collapsing. We add to that that the welfare state is very fragile, that public policies are very fragile and they don't respond to this care demand. That's one way to rethink the system. Otherwise, we will have a terrible impact on gender equality. This is a very schematic way to put it, right? In today's pandemic crisis situation, we are more aware that the system is too fragile, right? The problem is not the child, but rather the elderly who need support. And the problem is that dependency goes far beyond the definition that we used to say, right? Because we live in social societies and we are all interdependent. The thing is that dependency varies depending on your stage in life. So what is the first thing that I would like to say? The first response was to say, oh, there are essential services, essential work that have not even been recognized, cleaning services, nursing services, supermarket staff, etc. So all that has to do with the care economy and that becoming essential services in the context of the lockdowns, at least some social recognition. But this crisis also underlines that the sectors are extremely feminine, and this means that there has been a clear lack of visibility and economic recognition of the sector. Today, crisis might be an opportunity to underline the urgent need to reframe the labor market and to reframe the importance of the care economy. We need to reorganize ourselves socially, rethink society to respond to all these needs that will keep growing in the next years. Because in this, I mean, even if we overcome the pandemic, population aging is a fact that will keep affecting us in the future. So we need to keep living autonomously in the future is a problem. Or why am I not that optimistic when it comes to trying to understand today's crisis as an opportunity when we are referring to a sector that has become a vicious cycle because it lacks social and economic recognition of today's crisis, even if it underlined the importance of the economy has not been sufficient, right? Because from March onwards, public investment to improve labor conditions of care workers, majority of them are women, they work very hard to respond to the needs of things, and there has been no injection of public money in the sector. So unfortunately, I think that we are not in the good path. So there's a lack of social recognition. We need this has improved, but still they are economically not well remunerated. So dependent cities that are not often organized. So there's a clear fragility of the beneficiaries of care services and also care workers are fragile and vulnerable. Cleaners, day center workers, health center workers are oftentimes in a fragile situation, and that's a problem. Of course, we could fine tune this definition, but there is precarity, and this means a lack of articulation and continuity, and it's a vicious circle, isn't it? Vulnerability, lack of social recognition, and lack of economic recognition. What about opportunities? Where to take the crisis to turn this vicious circle into a virtual circle? We need to better understand that the care economy is key. There's no way around it. It's one of the few sectors that can keep producing jobs, are creating jobs, very labor-intensive jobs that are not so easily distracted over a crisis. And here I ask myself, why not having national plans in care economies? Because it's an absolute guarantee. If we turn the vicious circle into a virtuous circle, we will produce, we will create jobs, we will improve the visibility of the sector, we can reinforce the confidence of those working in the sector. So it's a vicious circle that ends up undermining and even deepening more and more the social equality, the already existing social inequalities. We need to transform society. Perhaps we can see the crisis as an opportunity from the feminist perspective in which logic is not so much based on the productivity and not so much human well-being. So there's a clear lack of social perspective when it comes to taking adoption that have theological perspective is absolutely necessary, but yet insufficient. We need to also understand social relationships. And from here on, we could see today's scenario as an opportunity. And this opportunity scenario would have a positive cascade scenario, the sexual division of labor. We need to understand that violence against women is produced in this logic. I believe that going back to the basis of today's situation, which is labor, sexual division of labor, which is the basis for many gender inequalities and many other situations that today define the life of many women, and that ends up becoming a problem of gender violence. I think it was the topic of the forum, and I can clarify saying that the feminist economy we have to better understand today's crisis, the pandemic situation in which we are immersed, and we also need to take into account that when the pandemic comes to an end, the challenge will still be there. And here is where we need to place as much effort as possible, as much energy as possible. In my case, I'm a fair vision, and also when it comes to the claims and the critics. So I'm gonna leave it here, and I'm pleased to answer to the questions that you might have. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sara. It's been thrilling. Thank you very much for this first presentation that will help us better understand the bond between the 2008 crisis and today's crisis. Now, with the following speakers with my colleagues, we would like to get more in detail regarding many of the impacts of the points that you raised on the power relationship that you referred to. We'll give the floor now to a cleaner, to a representative of the cleaning sector, the health sector, etc. I would like to give the floor to Vania Arana. First of all, thank you very much for being here, Vania. What an amazing presentation that really reflects the crisis in 2008. That's the origin of the Kellys. We live, I mean, we've been so, we're in a so precarious sector, and we've had to get organized and claim for our rights. Of course, in the past, we've found many barriers because, of course, as a women, we're not treated with the due respect. Times we are seen as women who are never gonna claim for our rights. We're gonna be, I mean, like you're gonna allow to be yelled at. Violence is not necessarily only gender violence between men and women. There's a violence from women against other women, not just for rhetoric. It happens to us very often at work when your colleague, who's perhaps your supervisor, treats you like shit and they make you feel horrible. And that's when we decided to rebel and revolt because we thought, no, we're not going to accept that. It's not acceptable. So we have even been victims of obscene language as if we were like garbage, like shit. And we have had to fight back because, of course, for example, if you work in a hotel, if you are a waiter, if you are a cleaner, a deck cleaner, you are just like the last of the line. But no one realizes that if you are, if you make living of renting a hotel, you need to have a clean hotel. That's why we're very important. Of course, all women are, all cleaners have always been badly treated, etc. And not only, not only today, but also in the past, right? Sometimes we are treated very badly by men and women, and this is horrible because it produces a great deal of anxiety, fear, an unsurmountable fear, which at the beginning you don't understand. They threaten you with your salary, and your salary is your bread. Back in 2008, it has already been said, the crisis was just horrible for us. And it was horrible because the crisis affected many different sectors, but in fact, it didn't affect us that much. Hotels burned more and more during the crisis. It was incredible. So now, in the context of the COVID-19 crisis, the situation has worsened for us. From the very beginning, 70,000 colleagues from the outsourcing companies lost all their rights. No unemployment benefits, nothing, or very short ones. And taking a cleaner and say, don't worry, I will call you back. when all this is over, many women have been asked to sign their own sentence. Many companies force women to sign a voluntary step down from work. What happens here? What happens is that many colleagues are now ruined. They have no money, and they have to go ask for food. Not necessarily the state, even civil society organizations, charities. These are the ones that are helping those situation of distress and need. So what happened here? That more and more women are overloaded, were sick. There's a group of women of deck cleaners who are on sick leave. They're just stressed out, burnt out, they're alone, isolated. That's another problem that we have to face, isolation. One of our major claims has to do with the acknowledgement of our labor conditions. Some of the diseases that we experience as a result of our work are not recognized by the health sector. And we have to fight for our rights in this sense. There are more and more women who are experiencing illness as a result of their work. In a research carried out in Costa Blanca, in Valencia, out of 100% of the deck cleaners, 65% were sick. So what does that mean? That means that businessmen, those who exploit us, have abused us. They abuse us as a collective. So for me, the fact that you are given so much work at such a low pay is a form of violence because they just don't let you go. When you step into the hotel, you are kidnapped until you have cleaned all the rooms. They make you work more than 8 hours when in fact your contract says 4 or maximum 5 hours. So this is the situation for us. Some of my colleagues were taking a shower. They had at 7 o'clock in the evening. They had started work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they were like taken out of the shower and asked to clean yet another room. And that's just horrible because you have your own family. Perhaps you want to go back home. You need your rest. You need to take your rest, right? That's a human right. But unfortunately, this is not our case. We are just seen as a number. If you're productive, you're perfect. If you're well informed, if you claim for your rights, you're fired. If you're pregnant, you're fired. Because of course, oftentimes they said, no, you cannot fire pregnant women. Of course, we are fired all the time. All of us, when we are pregnant, we are fired. Now, and you have to go to the court, and the courts are very slow because there are so many cases that are just impossible, it's just too slow. Many of us don't have the means to wait for one entire year for a case to be resolved. And this is just one of the burdens that we have to live with. That's one of the main challenges of the thing. And That's why we're out in the street claiming for our rights. We believe that our labor conditions are worsening more and more on the cleaning sector in general because the COVID-19 I mean, profile of women for the cleaning sector is very carefully designed by employers. And what women do they prioritize? Well, foreigners, especially those who speak other languages, and those who don't have the will to claim for their rights. Our colleagues from Africa, well, many of them didn't speak a word of Spanish. They have never worked as deck cleaners. Nonetheless, they were hired. I mean, I'm happy that they were hired, but do you know why they hire them? Even if they don't have experience, well, because they know that they're going to be mild. We like training them, we love them. The thing is, employers hire them because they know that they are not going to be complaining from day one. That's why they are fired, and those who experience speak the language were fired. If you ask them to have a 5 minute rest, they're upset. If you tell them, listen, I didn't have lunch, it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm hungry, many of the employers are upset, and that's why they hire foreigners who don't speak the language because they think they will complain less. And if they are mothers, it's even better because they know that they need the money, even more money if you don't have time. So you're not treated as human beings. Our work has been dehumanized. There's no respect between colleagues, between our boss, women, our boss, sometimes the one that abuses us the most. You're just a vicious circle. I think, where is that gonna end? How is that gonna end? That's why the Kellys have organized ourselves, and since 2016 we are out and out in the streets, denouncing the situation in hotels, and denouncing the abuse that we suffer at the hands of outsourcing companies. These companies are companies that aim at stealing. Oh, now we all need bread, right? After the crisis, many of our husbands were hired, so we had no money at home. Many of our colleagues have been evicted from their homes today, a couple of weeks ago. We helped, or we tried to help, a family that was about to be evicted in Padilla here in Barcelona. It's so unfair. And, they received no help. Where's all this help that politicians announce in TV? For example, when they say, don't worry, when there's a child alarm, your salary is going to be preserved. All this help is not there anymore. We, at least, are not benefiting from that. Do you know where we found some support? Do you know who has really helped us? Similar helped us a great deal. Similar is a group of professionals that we really, really appreciate. We are very happy with the cooperation we have with them. But politicians, decision makers, they are not helping out. So seen from this perspective, of course, we'll keep fighting and we'll keep claiming for our rights. Our goal is to make sure that our work is properly paid, that our skill is respected, that our job is valued, and to make sure that Article 42 is implemented. The minister has insisted on the importance of this article, like she's been insisting on it for 3 weeks. But of course, they are not really up for it. They are not willing to get rid of outsourcing companies because when you outsource your employees, you earn more money, right? But in fact, what matters here is the dignity of human beings, love towards other human beings. You need to love others. You need to love those who work for you. In the past, it used to be the case. Some colleagues in the past were extremely united. They loved each other. Why has everything been so dehumanized? Why? I keep asking myself, what's wrong with us? Perhaps I'll sound a little bit, I don't know, naive, but we love each other. If I see a colleague suffering, I'll go and help her. I don't give a damn if a colleague calls in and say, I'm feeling sick. I mean, if it's 5 o'clock in the morning, I will wake up and help her. Why? Because we've learned how to love each other. We aim for a society that is more based on love, on joy, on happiness, on health management, and on wealth production. Otherwise, we're lost. We'll be lost and left behind. Then there's a quality stamp that could also, I believe, improve the sector, the hotel sector. A quality stamp that has been approved in the Catalan Parliament in 2018, 2 years ago already, and it has not yet been developed or implemented. Why is that? That's a major question. We're also impressed about that because once we had a meeting with a political party, and they handed over a letter, and in the letter said, well, employers send a letter to politicians and political parties asking them not to approve the quality stamp. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Employers are extremely powerful and they rule over parliament. How dare they? I mean, the parliament voted for this quality stamp. So how does the employers or how do employers organization dare interfering with the democratic political process? But that's because this goes against their interests. The quality stamp. No, the quality stamp is just a matter. I mean, it doesn't cost a euro. The quality stamp will be only awarded to a hotel if they respect labor conditions, if they respect legality, they put in place health and safety measures. Because, all the chemicals that we use are toxic and cancerogenious. So that's what the whole thing is about, and they don't want to. They don't want the stamp will have to be approved. We've been chasing the minister, the original minister, for ages, but he doesn't want to meet us. I meet every Wednesday the trade union headquarters. Will persevere. We inform citizens about the situation because citizens need to be aware of our situation. We need to be aware of the fact that those who shall be doing something are not doing anything for us. We need to work together. We need to be united to move forward and to claim for our dignity as women, our dignity as workers. And that's not only happening in my sector, but in general, all around, in many sectors. Listen, when we started our action, we were just wiped out from the public domain, and we thought, wow, that's going to be the situation in other sectors also. And that's, that has been the case. And now you can see that many workers are outsourced, not only in my sector, but in many, many sectors. They are perhaps freelancers or, So what do we suggest? We suggest to develop more and more activities. For the time being, we are a self-managed organization, LasKellys, and we are also working on a project that has not yet been concluded, that I believe will be finalized in a couple of months, and that is extremely interesting. That's me. Our idea is to boost the union between us, love and care between us, dignity at work, and even more importantly, I don't know how to put it. Yeah, well, I think we need to love each other. I don't know how to put it, because we focus all our actions in care and love. And perhaps we're naive in thinking that we can change the world. Well, we are seeing some change here and there. There's more awareness towards us. That's also a fact. I need to thank those who have supported us, or that have given us support, rather. Thank you very much, Vania, for your presentation. Thanks for offering a very clear perspective about the situation and the different proposals that you have laid on the table. You have listed a few. There are already many, many questions regarding the points that you have raised. Now, we're going to go to the health sector. Montserrat, thank you very much, and the floor is hello and good afternoon. I don't know what a pity that this meeting is online. I would have loved to see you face to face, but that's the possibility. Thank you very much to the forum for having invited us. My colleagues have raised many points that I really share. So, I'm a health worker, I'm a nurse. I've been working in a hospital here in Barcelona for a long time. I'm a woman, I'm a trade unionist, and I'm a feminist. I would like to focus on health, of course. To start with, I would like to say that according to the EPA, there are more than 2 million professionals working in the health sector, in the private sector, and in the geriatrics. And out of them, 80% are women, and this gives us a very clear picture of the sector. As Sara said before, within this highly feminine sector, there is a clear pay gap. And of course, the health sector is no exception. It is estimated that the pay gap on average is 9,000 euros. I insist on average. So if we pay attention to this pay gap, in the public administration, the pay gap is around 16%. But in the health sector, the pay gap escalates up to 27.3. Let's see what is the role of women within the health sector, of course, the nursing sector, sector, the cleaning sector are, oh, it seems like the mic is off. And the new students, the majority of the students are women. That's why it's pretty curious that once they're graduated, there are more and more women in sectors such as surgery, traumatology, highly technical sectors, and women. The majority of women, of course, not all of them, I'm just giving you adults. Many women are working in the family sector and the care economy, right? So if we pay attention to the role of women, according to trade union, the trade union that I belong to, carried out a research about the glass ceiling, the role of the women, etc. And it is clear that in the managerial position of the Catholic hospital, well, 25% are women, whereas the 75% of managers are men. And this gives us also a clear picture about the situation, not to speak about Dr. Bart's, well, the majority of leaders are men. The nursing school of Barcelona is led by a man. I mean, now it's led by a woman. But, in a nurse school, not to say that 90% of us are women. So it's quite particular, isn't it? Same applies to the faculties of medicine. The majority of deans are men. Not to speak about the leaders of research centers. What is the role of women within science? All this brings us to think about the role of women within the health sector. For example, there's a research, very interesting research that I would like to outline here, led by Cooperativa Foundation, and it was concluded that the nursing staff, the guide staff, people working in the care economy, well, 35% of them end up developing, or we end up having depression, anxiety, whereas if you assess the same data in other sectors, the figure is reduced to 18 or 20%. According to the report, there are many factors that have an impact on anxiety and depression, such as fatigue related to work, and also related to the double presence, work-life balance, and there's an important precarity in the sector. There's another element that has to take into account. We're not in decision-making forums. We're not represented in the decision-making forums, and this, of course, means that there are many weaknesses. I would like to say also, and I would like to link it to what I was saying. Sometimes women have to go to work if they are sick. And here I would like to out those working in the care economy. We are very invisible. We live in a very precarious work, probably one of the most precarious sectors within the health sector. And it's very heavy in almost 90%, 78% of us are women or even more. And many of our colleagues last year, for example, the trade union, we a workshop on health, safety at work. And the figures were just horrifying. The amount of women that go to work even if they're sick. As Danny said before, it's just that you cannot afford not to go to work. Salaries are very low, as you all know. Salaries are really ridiculous in our sector. Sometimes we have many family members at home, and many of us are women who have physical work. Many colleagues go to work under painkillers because they have great pain, but they just cannot ask for a sick leave because otherwise their salaries are reduced and they couldn't pay their basic needs. Now it's been a long time that we are claiming for a collective agreement that is convenient to our labor needs and also based on a gender perspective. What's happening today in elderly centers, unfortunately, is nothing new. It's normal. The precarious situation in elderly centers have been exacerbated by COVID-19. The COVID-19 crisis has been a mirror. Before, Sara was referring to public investment. How many public elderly centers are there? Well, very little. They are in private hands, and the fact that all elderly centers are in private hands means that the investment resources are very low. The ratios are very little. Many of them are forced to horrible long hours with many penalties if you don't go to work. So what happens? Well, what happens with COVID as a professional condition? Many of our colleagues even went to work affected by COVID-19. It was incredible. I mean, I'm speaking about last week. It's crazy. It's incredible. It happened during the first wave, and we are still having many problems during the second wave. The public opinion, of course, has improved their perception about our jobs, but unfortunately, this has not been translated into an investment. The first wave was really horrible, and the second one is pretty horrible as well. We are having many trouble. For example, when it comes to life work balance, I would like to say that my trade union carried out a great research with more than 1,000 professionals this year in December last year and January this year. And the research underlines that 47% of medical professionals under or experience high levels of stress when it comes to labor and work balance. We are essential workers, but we're also women. We are part of a social tissue of a family. We're also part, I mean, we also need to take care of our elderly at home, and this is not being respected. We are experiencing a lot of problems when it comes to work balance. Even before the crisis, when we take into account that in hospitals and health centers, well, they are open 24/7. That means that you need to ask for a permit if you have a special needs. Of course, you need to carry out your work, right? Little by little, we had improved, and little by little, we had an impact. But now the COVID-19 has wiped out all our rights. And of course, I'm not saying that the COVID-19 is not a very severe pandemic and it's having a negative impact, but economically and the health level. But of course, the COVID-19 has wiped out our conciliation achievements. In many companies, essential workers are now imposed to reject their rights if they take care of a son or of an elderly person at home. And now they are being asked quite aggressively to reject their rights. And this right is recognized by law. But this is happening, because it's held that you are an essential worker. You have to work for 12 hours. Imagine working 12 hours, wearing a mask, etc. Especially if you work in an elderly center for the elderly. It's pretty horrible. The thing is, we are going backwards. Many colleagues falling as a result of the burden that we are imposed. What about quality plans? Of course, we're working on them. I mean, little by little, we are achieving little milestones. But if you really pay attention to the situation, it's very difficult to approve because the quality plans, sound quality plans with, good consequences for workers have to go hand in hand with an investment. And oftentimes this is not the case. Oftentimes, yeah, this is not the case. The COVID-19 is being used as an excuse. It's a perfect excuse that decision makers have found to stop investing, and also entrepreneurs and employers. Of course, they will say, yeah, of course, we're going to invest in these equality plans. But reality is there's no real interest in equality plans. That's unfortunate, but that's the case. There's this plan called Cooperativa, you take care of it, which is to try and burst this work-life balance in the health sector. But at the same time, many companies are escaping the plan, of course. So, this excuse of us being essential workers, what they are forgetting, that we are more than essential workers. We are women. We have also other things to do in life, and we have other needs that are not being taken into account. The health sector is going backwards massively, disruptively in terms of life-work balance. It's horrible. All the investment in life-work balance is undermining essential workers. I'm referring here to health workers and any person working in a hospital, our cleaning colleagues, the cooks, everyone. As Sara said before, the crisis, well, we don't know how we're going to get out of the crisis, but the situation today, everything is worse. Our major concern, I'm optimistic regarding the end of the pandemic, it's going to end sooner or later, but we'll have to start from scratch. We'll have to start from the beginning because this work-life balance plans are not going to pop up again. We'll have to start from scratch. Vania said that before. She referred to her pregnant colleagues. My colleagues, some colleagues in the trade union are not entitled to a sick leave when they are actually pregnant. Those fighting COVID-19, a pregnant women cannot be exposed to COVID-19 and they're not being granted this right to a sick leave because they are especially sensitive. They cannot be infected by COVID-19, and the same happens with other colleagues that are sensitive because that they are at risk, right, at health risk, because we're also sick sometimes. And this, of course, is undermining our lives and our struggles. Having said that, I would like to say that the only possible solution has to do with we have to keep working, as Bani said before, we have to keep trying to building bonds and laying on the table all the problems that we experience. And from time to time, there are good news, all the problems that we experience. And from time to time, there are good news. Yesterday, for example, our legal department was informed about a colleague, a cleaner, that had sued the company, the hires has been sanctioned because the company had not presented their reasons in writing, and she's been offered a grant for moral damage caused against her. So we have to keep working, insist, and we have to keep fighting in this struggle because if we want to empower ourselves, we have to take into account that the care economy is at the center of the economy. The paid care work and the non-paid care work, we need to believe in it as a society because we know that all feminine sectors are the worst paid ones. I don't know how to do it, but we need to disrupt the situation. I don't have like a magic recipe, otherwise we wouldn't care. Today, November the 5th, is the day of the caregivers. The care economy needs to be at the center of the economy. If, today we're all being optimistic, like we need to renew the social tax, well, we need to think about the care model that we want for the future, what society we want in the future. Aging is a reality, as we said before, and the demand for care services will increase. Today, we're not who we were in the past. Today, we are health workers, those who work in elderly centers, because those who work in elderly centers are very ill and they need a lot of attention. So we need to go and reflect about what we want for the future. And I would like to end on a positive note, and I'd like to say that we're going to overcome the situation, but we will have to place the care economy at the center. Otherwise, will revert the situation. Thank you very much for your attention. Montserrat, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Amanda for organizing this session. And I don't want to insist on what has already been said, but I want to take an intersectional perspective to reassess all this reflection about, well, this reflection stemming from the crisis and from the health and economic crisis provoked by COVID-19. As it has been said before, we need to place life at the center. And I believe that this idea that, well, somehow refers to a moral duty or a political duty, depending on who speaks. Well, I believe this is unquestionable, right, for many of us here present. But we need to take into account that there's a social class that makes money distracting our lives. And then there is an important amount of people who are disprotected or dispossessed of their power and time, and they cannot place life at the center, because placing life at the center is a nice word, but it's also a privilege. It is a privilege which is reserved to a few. It's not available for us all. So within this social class, in Marxist terms, not to speak in other terms, so within this social class, there's workers, and there are different there are different groups within workers, within also depending on the gender, on the skin color, ethnic origin, religions, beliefs, etc. In our society, these differences become inequalities that also help us understand why some social groups are not entitled the right to place life at the center. So, Monse, Vania, and Sara has already said, and that's the way I put it, the violence that such inequalities mean in today's society and also in the context of economic crisis. So on the one hand, there's inequality between groups and people that, well, there's people that, well, some people don't agree. The COVID-19 is not affecting us all at the same degree, especially not women, those who are or who don't have enough time, well, because many women don't have time, nor energy, nor room to have a healthy life. And also there are people in some continents. It's also important, right? Because the world is not only Europe; it goes far beyond Europe. So there are some continents who are dying at the hands of COVID-19 because there's no public health, because some bodies are vulnerable as a result of a lack of sleep or having a proper house, etc. And then there's gender inequalities, as it has been said before. And if we place these inequalities in the context of the pandemic, all inequalities are even more accentuated because our public health sector had already been undermined in Europe, in Catalonia, and in Spain. There's a very important job precarization in the health sector because some decision makers are accepting that poverty is now a reality. And in Europe, in democracies, especially in southern European countries, we find ourselves in a situation in which public institutions are not paying or giving any importance to the feminized jobs or the jobs that are being executed by these women with or without a job contract. So all these jobs are unpaid oftentimes or poorly paid. In today's world, I believe that some elites would even dare asking us to work for free, especially those working in the care economy, in the sense that what has been said before, this is a war. This is a feminist war. And we say it's a war not only because we are dealing with physical violence or sexual violence. The war includes violence against also because our lives are less valued than man's life. So we are at war for our survival. I believe that the situation is being managed at the expense of us women also, as women member of vulnerable social groups, especially in today's capitalist economy. As it has been said before by Montserrat and by Vania, there's the health workers, there's the cleaners of hospitals, of hotels, those who work as cleaners at homes, etc. So in this sense, I would like to say that there is the will to undermine women's life, and there's an intersection between inequalities based on gender and ethnic inequalities, right? So now think about all these intersections. I believe that we need to denounce universalist pretensions that stem from a moral patriarchal approach because part of the care economy is always carried out by migrant women, especially. I believe that here we would have to underline or recall the work of home workers. It's a very recurrent analysis. Oftentimes, women, migrant women, face unemployment, face risk of unemployment in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. So, women working in precarious jobs or those working somehow, or those who lose the right to work in the context of the COVID-19. Well, migrant women are more affected by the situation. And as a result of that, there's a lack of resources. The social economy, the social and solidarity-based economy, as Amanda said, could be considered like a continuity. I haven't had the time to. I'd like to share some initiatives, some figures, some practices and strategies from the social and solidarity-based economy, but I wanted to also give you the context. The social economy, social and solidarity-based economy could be an alternative and could also respond to all the inequalities that I mentioned. That's the question. And in today's world, in the context of the COVID-19 crisis, well, there's a response, right, from the solidarity-based economy. I believe that this opens an option to enhance stability. I would like to say here, or I would like to list a few examples. Let me check my words. Yeah, I think I have some time still. Well, I'm here to speak about this, right? So before anything else, I would like to say that cooperativism, in the context of the social and solidarity-based economy, we're not inventing new political principles or new strategies. So all its premises are based on covering social needs on the basis of solidarity. And we need to take a feminist perspective that aims at placing people and living conditions at the center of the analysis and the praxis that is implemented by solidarity-based organizations. And there's also a willingness to overcome the dichotomy between the public and the private sphere. It's like all the solidarity-based entities today need to make another effort to overcome such dichotomy, to become cooperativist. Well, it doesn't mean that you cannot. It doesn't mean that you don't have needs, or it doesn't mean that you don't want to overcome such dichotomy between the public and the private sector. In a sense, I would like to now refer to the situation today in the context of the coronavirus crisis, the social and economic crisis. We have to refer to the concept of economy for life. At the beginning of the pandemic, many solidarity organizations promoted this initiative to support solidarity initiatives aiming at offering solutions to the health emergency. So there's been this resistance box to invest in projects that have offered a direct response. And this initiative invested 28,000 euros to 40 initiatives. Amongst these initiatives here, I would like to refer to what I just said. There are 8 initiatives that have been led by migrants organizations from a feminist perspective, because there's this for example, Mujeres Palante, a cooperative that is also an organization. I'm sure that Vania knows the organization well. During the first month of the pandemic, they distributed food among families in the south of Barcelona. And when the resources ended, well, it doesn't mean that the initiative came to an end. They continued collecting the support of their social bases, and our colleagues from India, women, worker women, have developed a resistance network because they had lost their jobs and they wanted to reinvent their possibilities and aiming at opening a new pathway to restructure their work lives. And in this sense, I would like to refer to the top trade unions that have reoriented their sewing workshop, and they have reinvented it, and they are producing masks and pajamas for nurses and doctors to help them protect from coronavirus. And the same has happened with the Biomco Cooperative. Their activity is exclusive and everything has been reoriented. The Barca Cooperative prepared catering food for volunteers working during the pandemic. The Tic Tac colleagues have led a project through a self-organized group of professionals and migrants, and they have been giving support to people distributing food. To allow to pay for the rent to families that could not pay for their rent, and they've been offering also legal support to all these people. So I believe that this is one of the main initiatives that could be listed as an example of this anti-racist, community-based feminist action, because all this effort has placed life at the center. Plus, I would like to share an initiative led by ourselves. Without giving you too much information, we tried to develop a software to automatically translate health protocols and messages published by the health authorities to disseminate all the messages to representatives of minority languages: Urdu, Hindi, Arab, and Chinese. Well, minority languages here in Catalonia at least, so that the message is reached by as many people as possible, because many people have no access to this information in Catalan or in Spanish. There are strategies and experiences that are either transformative the many initiatives in the solidarity economy that are not perhaps intersectional in nature, but they are feminist, yeah, and they are pushing forward, or at least showing a clear effort to share the responsibility of the care economy, paid and non-paid care economy. In this sense, I believe that we should congratulate, or perhaps you know that better than me, Amanda. There's a commission that is in the process of, there's a commission and there are several initiatives and projects such as Almena Feminista Cooperative. I think, Amanda, you are a member of this cooperative, and there is a guideline and the feminist approach. There's another project led by the FIVIR entitled Planting Care to Achieve Change, and all this is important, all these initiatives, projects are important, and also articles that can be used as very practical tools to show that the solidarity-based and social economy can transform their internal solutions from a feminist perspective. And here I would like to refer to a research carried out by our colleague Sara that presents a list of recommendations. They speak about democratizing the care economy, especially in Barcelona, and I believe that all these elements are or need to be taken into account when we want to approach the care sector from the feminist approach. Of course, each entity will come up with their own road, with their specific map. A few elements, a few common elements that I believe could help us find inspiration whenever we need to better understand the perspective that we are taking within the solidarity-based economy in terms of feminism. So all these initiatives, all these elements, all these strategies, well, I would say that the answer is that there are two elements here. On the one hand, we need to rethink and vet for a reformulation of the different conciliation measures, and when it comes to building an alternative to capitalism, and we need to vet also to question the centrality of productive work within this socialist society. And of course, we need to do so to the extent of our possibilities. We need to transform power management and to redistribute role power to ensure that our entities are more horizontal. I'd like to conclude. I know that Vania knows, but I would like to refer to the initiative Copolis that aims at transforming the world on the basis of a struggle against racism. I believe this initiative, well, the proposal of the initiative is if we are capable of transforming labor relationships within the solidarity-based equality-based economy, we need to do so from an intersectional perspective and an anti-racist perspective, because we cannot stick to being a network in which migrants have no access. We need to grant access to migrants to our networks, and we need to promote what Sara mentioned before. We need to enhance stability, especially labor stability, and we need to ensure more labor stability for migrants from a feminist perspective. And this will only be possible if we can increase this type of initiatives and mutual care initiatives within the solidarity-based economy. That's it from my side. Thank you very much. I hope it wasn't too long. I'm a little bit nervous. Thank you for your presentation. So now, Q&A. There are a few. We have around 10 questions and only half an hour. So let's open the list of questions. Some are quite specific. Some are, well, I'm going to ask you the question directed to you. There are some people who want to know more about the way you get organized, the average number of members in your organization. There's another question by Esperanza regarding whether there are men in your organization. And then there's another question in terms of, do you have support from any other trade union? What about the labor inspection? Are they like-minded? Do you have the support of a labor inspection unit? There's also a question here from the what about what is the stuff that you referred to before? A very specific method. Please be as specific as possible. As brief as possible. Vania, you have the floor. Not to skip any of the questions. If I don't, please remind me, because there were a few. That was approved a couple of years ago by the Catalan Parliament. And that includes some guidelines. Granted to companies that hire their workers directly instead of outsourcing them through outsourcing companies here. And it would also include some risk assessments. And the most important thing is to ensure dignity at work. Today we are protesting because the stamp has not been, let's say, finally implemented due to the political interferences that we referred to before. So every Wednesday we protest in Via Laietana, where the employers' organization is. Because, if they want to put their dirty hand in the parliament, we knock on their door every Wednesday to protest and say, listen, stop that. We are in a very difficult moment and we need a quality stamp to ensure dignity for workers. At the end of the pandemic, the end of the first with my colleagues, those who started working again, were not offered masks. There was no protocol to clean up the rooms. And we were like, how is that even possible? How is that even possible? Hotels have not implemented a protocol. There's a clear lack of respect. We hope that Mr. Shakir El-Hamrani, the minister, will listen to us. Now, when it comes to the labor inspection department, well, last year many hotels were fined. We're also asking for labor inspection to be properly staffed because there's only 15 of them and they cannot manage the whole metropolitan area of Barcelona. Now, when it comes to, well, there's many colleagues. The 17 of us were quite visible. Many of our colleagues cannot be visible because that is a fact. Many colleagues are looking for a job, are not hired because they are members of the union. That's why many colleagues sometimes don't want to join us. As soon as they join us, they are hired right away. Isn't it dramatic? We become now a trade union. One point that I skipped before. In the past, we used to be an organization of women, and it was impossible for us to achieve any milestone. But when we became a trade union, then everyone was like, oh, wow, you're difficult. What can we do? That's horrible. I'm like, how is that even possible that's my right as a trade union? And this, for example, was the case in the Catalan Parliament when the quality standard referred to before was approved. Comisiones and UGT trade unions denied our right to become a trade union, and this was painful and sad. It was very sad. The fact that they want to recognize that a woman that is part of a women's organization cannot form a trade union. And we know nothing about law or about the legal framework. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're saying very interesting things. This is very interesting. I'm really sorry, but there are many questions. So unless you want to say anything else, I'm gonna read the next question. we only have 15 minutes left. There's another question about the care economy. Is there a difference between the public and the private sector regarding the health sector workers? Is there any difference in treatment? And tell me about the role of investment funds. How can we avoid investment funds to keep growing in the health sector? Please be brief because we don't have much time left. Yes, I'll be as brief as possible. So yeah, there is important difference. The private health sector imposes very different collective agreements. Why is health privatized? Well, it's a business, isn't it? They want to make money. So what happens? There is an important difference between collective agreements and labor conditions. I'm not going to give you information in detail, but of course, there's a major difference. There are many agreements. There's public agreement, the private agreement, the PP agreement, which is very important here in Catalonia. And then there are regarding the investment it's happening a lot in elderly centers. As I said before, there are very little public elderly centers. Many are at the hands of multinational corporations that have nothing to do with. They are not NGOs. Their aim is to make money. How can you make money? Well, by cutting salaries, by imposing draconian labor conditions. Vania said the only way to make money is to exploit others. The only way to make money is by using strategies against workers. Horrible. That's why before I said that we need to claim dignified salaries, not only salaries but also working conditions. It's not only about the salaries; it's about working conditions that are relevant. But we need to change paradigm because if we there are many stakes at hand, right? We need strong legal framework. And we need to ensure that there are inspections. This is a very complex topic, and I know it's not impossible. It's not possible. But yeah, there are some questions, some general questions, so any of you can answer. How can we There's another question. So how can we bring more men into the care economy? That's another question. I would like to start. How would we make the open economy turn to open political will? So feel on tendency might have had good intentions on the paper, but from the moment we considered this, well, this is of course making professionalization of the sector a little bit more complicated here. We're speaking about ensuring that as I said before, it's a matter of political will. There's a lot to be done. And as I said, we should never see it on the hands of the private market because the private market is a business, so it's now or never. It's gonna grow, it's gonna worsen. So now it's all about deciding whether we want to make it. We want to grow, let's say, from a public perspective or from a private perspective. I think there's no initiative to promote or enhance the professionalization of the sector. I don't know, to be honest. Everything in the sector, there are two ideas. On one hand, the new masculinity, that's how new masculinities are reframing, because in crisis is an opportunity to reframe the gender role. So some men are little by little contributing to the care economy, but only when it comes to the benefits of taking care of a child. They never take care of other people because it's much nicer than taking care of another elderly person, right? Because they degenerate, so socially recognized. They're just the challenges to make sure that men do it truly, not only because it's sexy to be. It, of course, would be more of an individual perspective. And also what's going on in the labor market. When the labor market expels many of the men in the production sector, some of them decided to jump into the care economy. This is positive, of course, but private opportunistic, isn't it? That's for working, I don't know, hospital classes, it's much better paid than those who clean hospitals. The timetable is completely different, and women work from 4 in the morning to 9 in the morning when there's no one. It's an invisible job where those who work in classes, they work whenever they want, from 10 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, as they do because it's dangerous. So oftentimes this ends up reinforcing horizontal segregation and inequality in terms of. Thank you, Sarah. I'd like to add something. I wanted to say that many people from the construction sector, as she said, reinvented themselves. They took a curve. They started working in, I don't know, elderly center. But as soon as the construction sector improved, they left. They abandoned their them, of course, not many. And they went back to the construction sector. It was just a matter of within the labor market. People that are better social workers of the care economy. Or if we don't improve the conditions, men are not going to be there. If well, so they're not going to be there. Long to improve. It's possible they left their run away, and it's always women who stay for to the work. We need to really prestige the sector. It's a matter of recognition, visibility, recognition, and prestige. Otherwise, it's going to be, as I said, an apart. There's another woman, Güneş, somehow rather responded. When we speak about the glass ceiling, that we are referring to some social class, would be sticky floor. Like the glass ceiling and the sticky floor are two different things. Exactly, because we're thinking about two different phenomena. There's the glass ceiling and there's the sticky floor. It's not the same. Not being able to, let's say, go all the way to the moon than being stuck on the floor, right? Different. On the one hand, we have the horizontal, the vertical. So those women who are in the labor market, we end up finding a glass ceiling, highly qualified women. There's a problem. And then there's the horizontal segregation or the sticky floor, where women are concentrated in precarious sectors. They are stuck there, and it's important for them to take off. This affects the profile of women. The profile of women with lower qualifications, with lower, more precarious. This has to do with the economy, no doubt about it. Thank you very much, Sara. There's a question related to Vania. International, any international struggle that you are carrying out at the any international partnership. And I would like to ask you, well, to the other, we might like European platform with Italian, English, and Germany for the time being is a bit stuck as a result of the COVID. We've had more contact with other Germany to the hotel where the representative were working. Now, we have also been able to announce the situation on the poverty only that this is not only in Spain, but all around reality. Every is that some lower in high commission, commission work on the way to what we present in Parliament for the first that were we can also be clear, but I think it's are in we have there job and can you a line or very much that that's what we like that and that you you have support solidarity and constantly of as well first to play I would say that again for the whole to the organizer to make this level